All right, let's start it off with Bitcoin CME. Following up on yesterday's analysis, we had these little LARP lines drawn in here as a essential rejection. Sorry, not necessarily a rejection, but a failure of the 49 400-ish region that we spoke about yesterday, and that did initiate our move down to basically test around this following channel that we broke out of about a week. About a week earlier on the 21st of December, right on over here. Now, again, as long as Bitcoin is within this overall range between about $52,000 to the upside versus about $45,500 to $46,000 to the downside, I actually do still look at this as more or less good long term, but that does not mean that Bitcoin can't come back down to even test a little bit lower than this region. If we do go into the daily for CME, there's a very obvious setup right here, and the setup is this. Look, as long as Bitcoin's below, especially the 200 simple, it is a lot more likely to test to the downside into that 46-ish area, give or take about $500 from that area, than it is not. But if you do see, especially a closure today or tomorrow above that region, which is just around 48,000 and about, let's say 700, as it will be ever so slightly moving down right there, that would be a really good indication for Bitcoin in the short term for once again being in a position of power. Again, however, what is an actual confirmation of a break to, of the upside of the range, initiating targets back up, not just to, $55,000, but realistically looking probably somewhere back around about $58,000 to $59,000. That would still be above $52,000 right here. And you know what I'm actually going to be doing right now? It's actually going to be moving down the major area to be aware of from that prior $54,000 region now to 52. I do think that that is the most relevant region to be aware of. Of course, if you are a little more conservative, you probably do wait for the $54,000 region, but ultimately I think that is going to be more or less one and the same. And still, any sort of a closure on a higher term time frame above $52,000, maybe even on a 4-hour time frame as well, as Bitcoin did get some pretty obvious rejections there on both spot and CME in the last 48 hours, I would feel comfortable and confident saying that Bitcoin, yes, very likely does make its move pretty much right around this region over here, at which that's going to be your next big bad test. By the same token, to the downside, this would be your bad zone, so to speak, down below 45,500 or so. Just anything closing on a new lower low would not be interpreted as, good. Obviously, that would be continuation of trend, which, to be fair, Bitcoin does have a bearish setup right here. Not only are we on a downtrend, but if you are playing the crown cross strategy, you are looking at this as, well, not the best, I would say. And what do I mean by not the best? Well, you see very low volatility pulling into a lower high. Yes, it is on the 21, not necessarily on the 55. So a little bit of a discrepancy there. I do want to ideally see them on the 55. And we do see that Bitcoin would have an ever so slight drive of hidden bearish divergence, I believe. Let me just double check. Between this point, which is 48.16 versus our most recent one. No, actually it is not there. It is actually just below. This is inconsistent with what we see on spot price action. So Mr. Moonbear, I think it was, in the Discord yesterday, asked a really good question about this. Do you identify this as a setup on spot? Yeah, absolutely. It is a setup on spot. I mean, you see multiple drives of hidden bearish divergence come off that last rejection. Bitcoin tests actually directly into the 55. Volatility is a little, it's okay right there. It's not perfect, but it is acceptable. You don't necessarily need anything, things to be 100% perfect, but ultimately, given that sort of a setup, it's the same thing as what we see on CME below about the 200 simple. As long as Bitcoin's below about 48,700 to 48,800, let's say, I should be looking for some more downside based off this, to be fair, to be 100% directly clear with you. And if we go over here into our medium and higher term timeframes for Bitcoin on CME, we're actually going to see daily Stokes turn to the downside with any sort of a closure below about 46,850. So that is going to be a major area to be watching within the next day here, just because if Bitcoin does close below there, that is at minimum going to very likely imply another test down towards about 45,500-ish region. And could that just lead towards a general continuation move based off of the setup right here? Yeah, absolutely can. However, I still do retain a few points of hopium. That's what I mean to be saying. And I cannot get, personally myself, super bearish looking for major continuation moves down towards, probably our 4th of December lows at about $41,000, $42,000 until Bitcoin does close on new lows. If you go over here to the 2-day on spot price action, which is closing not today, but tomorrow, we do, and by the way, the 2-day on spot price action is actually really good. It has a much higher hit rate than the daily, for example, and it's kind of akin to what you do expect on a daily for CME. Just from my own back testing, those are the results that I've essentially found. But on the 2-day over here, we do see that the 200 simple has been kind of governing our lows. A lot of our wick lows in the last, realistically in the last like year and a half, actually, if you go all the way back to November 2019, you can see that the 200 simple right here, represented by this white moving average, has gotten the major lows right in over here. Yes, we did have a few wicks below, but no opens and closures below. This obviously did produce, a rather nice move to the upside, almost a little bit above 50% right there. Did catch a few of the wick lows that you did see on this consolidation after the old flu dump, which, can't expect TA to really be working on a fucking flu dump, trajectory like that, except for trend, which trend was to the downside, to be fair. And then more importantly, more recently, we do see it catching the lows on the bear trap that we saw in July, and then more recently our 4th of December lows on that very fateful day of recent memory. So Bitcoin did come back down around there. I'd probably be looking for wick lows down around there, and then very likely Bitcoin closing back above, let's say, $46,000. If you see something like that, again, I'm looking more for bounces and lows within this area rather than continuation first and foremost. But hey, if Bitcoin does close below the range lows, I do have to get bearish on that for continuation at minimum down to the prior massive low that we did see again on the 4th of December at about $41,000 to $42,000. And then of course, that's going to be the big bad one, because if Bitcoin starts to lose that level, then it no longer has probably the biggest point of hopium right now, which is actually very relevant. I use hopium as a term of endearment here, but basically that would be the weekly higher lows. And well, we still have higher highs, obviously, but even coming back down and taking out that last higher low, that would be obviously rather concerning. Now, I'm sure a lot of people are calling this a head and shoulders right here as well. Could you call this a head and shoulders? Actually, you could in this case, but what would be confirmation of this as a head and shoulders for the long term? Well, the neckline is, guess where? It's right around that 41 or more like $42,000 region. Any sort of a closure below there or a wick below your current range lows of the weekly would very likely initiate some pretty nasty moves to the downside. Probably looking at targets down towards $32,000 to $33,000 if that condition were to be met. But here's the thing, and here's the point that I really want to wrap all this up on, is that there is a bit of hopium, or actually, hold on. Before we get into the hopium point, maybe we talk about lower term timeframes, because I haven't really spoken about that much at all here. So let's get into that right now. Let's look at 4-hour momentum oscillators. What do we see right here? We do see that volatility is actually rather high, and we do see that 4-hour RSI is going to be having a chance to put in some drives of bullish divergence between this point and this point. Obviously, this was a low that was, well, actually, we're not even lower than that low right now. So no, there would not be, in fact. I apologize. In fact, there's not even possible at all. Let's see, maybe like a 6-hour over here. No, that's also not going to work, because we're obviously not in lower lows as well. You know what? I take all of that back. The lower term time frame hopium, not so much when you put it to the test right here. Maybe on an hourly we have something to be aware of right now, and a little bit of a bounce very likely implied from our current region on the short-term timeframes. I think 48.3 to 48.2 is certainly within the realm of possibility. But here's the thing: as long as Bitcoin is below 48.7 or 48.8 on those medium and higher term timeframe closures, it is technically a lot more likely to go to the downside than the upside, with targets presumably speaking at around the 200 simple on the 2-day right here, which would be just under $46,000 to be fair. And then the question is, where do we actually close upon tomorrow night's daily closure at 7 p.m. Eastern time? Anyways, with that in mind, maybe we just briefly check out momentum oscillators over here, and then I'll talk about the hopium, of which, it's still very much relevant. But looking at the 4-hour right here, we actually will see we'll see the 4-hour Stokes turn to the upside above 48,520. Of course, this has corrected rather heftily over here, but not going to be turning up unless Bitcoin gets another $600 rally within the next 41 minutes and 24 seconds. So we will obviously update on this later on in the stream here, because that will be within the context of the stream. But for right now, going to be a bit of a trudge right there. We do see that the buy hourly is going to be turning up above 47,500. That is good, obviously building below the 4-hour, and then the hourly is also turning up above 57,515. We should actually check out the 3-hour here as well. Yeah, 3-hour is going to be turning up above 47,850. And so we kind of see the different, a bit of the opposite of what we saw yesterday. So yesterday we saw them all corrective, and they were kind of building on top of each other. Now we see the opposite with building on top of each other, but from turning up here. So this is actually a better bounce signal, to be fair, but all of those trajectories need to be maintained within those closing time frames. Then if we go to the 12-hour, I'm curious what we see over here. 12-hour still corrective at best below 51,250. Again, I don't think Bitcoin's doing any busting action to the upside above $52,000 anytime soon, to be fair. And then daily, like we said earlier, is going to turn down below 47, which would be rather nasty. I imagine that spot price action has already done that. In fact, it has below 51,200, and I suspect that we see the same things over here. Yeah, we do actually. So these ones are pretty much in line with each other. For what it's worth, spot price action on the 4-hour will turn back up with a 4-hour closure above $48,000, which it's only about $50 away from right now. So we probably see a little bit of a bounce attempt here first before anything else. The question is, does the bounce get back above about 48.8 or 48.7 on a medium medium or higher term time frame closure. If it does, then I would be looking at this as probably your next higher low, and that's going to play into the best of the best hopium that I can find for you right now, which is this essentially. So let's go back on over here to the daily CME signal. We're doing, you know exactly what we're doing, but I do want to include this new piece of information that I was suggesting yesterday as we're seeing it come to fruition right now. So what is it? Well, basically we did mark off with all of these blue vertical bars right here, all of the same interpretations of the daily stochastic momentum for CME specifically, testing into the same areas on this bottom green horizontal bar right here at about the 11.5 region. All of those were met with some pretty impressive bounces, even within the context of very nasty, hefty, and very intense downside markets. And even the worst of these iterations, even the worst result of these did produce, a 25 to 30% move to the upside. I'm getting 28% this time, but the smallest like move of my mouse makes a humongous difference right there. But basically around 25% or so to the upside. And thus far from this signal given, have we gotten a 25% move to the upside? Well, let's measure it out right now and see if it's relevant. And no, we've gotten about 13.5% to the upside, which is good. But even on the worst of those iterations, historically speaking, we've been getting about 25%. And again, that is the worst. The second best one for reference, the second best iteration of that one for reference, again, in a very, very nasty downside market, was right here, and this one produced almost a 50% bounce. The one before that obviously was right on over here. This one also, a little bit more than 50%, and then this one over here, all these were eventually failures, but all of them were actually above 50%, except for that one that was 25%. So, this would be a bit of an outlier, statistically speaking, which I do think is worth knowing. And then on top of that, I marked off the 3 ones that we can look at down here in the red circles that are the most similar to each other in conjunction with the one that we're currently working on right here, which basically is a fractal of the signal where you see one base pop back up to the critical zone. That gets rejected. Second base also rejected, and then it bases a third time on the green horizontal and heads up. Okay, so let's go back onto this example over here, these 2 examples over here. The March 2021, we see just one rejection. The second one is accepted. Again, Bitcoin does take another like month and a half, 2 months after that in order to bust on through to the upside, and really never looks back ever after that, to be fair. But you'll notice that within that like next month and a half to 2 months, there was plenty of, ebbs and flows on this price action. I remember that one vividly, and I'm sure that anyone who was around here for more than, I guess that was like a year ago or a year and a half, or maybe 2 years ago now. I don't even fucking know, man. It was a while ago. Then, it was a very intense time, actually. No one was really sure, including myself. Anyways, looking at this one over here from December of 2018, where Bitcoin had a lot more of a similar signal to the one that we're working on right now, with 2 rejections before the acceptance right here. This one took even longer to consolidate. This one going all the way from that final acceptance in basically basically January of that year, all the way and resolved into April, in fact. So all of that is to be considered within the same context. Now, I wanted to mark off the next sort of set, and this is the new information on this signal that I wanted to present on this video, as we did yesterday as well, and kind of follow up on it. But basically it was this. So you see this other green horizontal bar right here at about the bullish control zone, the edge of it at the 60 region right there. Anyways, so I'm reading some of the comments right now, man. anyways, we do see, a rejection at that 60 read after the first acceptance of that major signal. So where does that come in around? Well, I marked it off with not the horizontal, but the vertical blue line right here. And as you can see, the double rejection correlates perfectly with the double, it's technically a double top right there, to be fair, and you get your first pullback. In this pullback, it's actually rather aggressive. You see that it pulls all the way back to pretty much your first low and bottoms out. And this is actually even new information right here, bottoms out at the 618, or let me actually do this properly. There we go. Bottoms out at the 618 right there. Very interesting. Remember that number as we're going to test it onwards and forwards from here. But anyways, again, takes a long time. You see that first move into the green bar, and then boom, big pullback to the 618 on that consolidation. Let's do the same thing for this one over here as well. Again, I do have the blue vertical bars correlated with the green horizontal right here for the same area. And guess what? That is your pullback area right here now, isn't it? Now let's see, how far did that pull back on this one? Well, Or let me actually do this for closing bases right now. There we go. Oh, and what do you fucking know, man? That pullback comes exactly to the 618 on that first higher low after that signal was given. Very, very interesting. Well, and again, I actually haven't done this before this stream here, so I'm kind of just rolling with this one, but we can do the same thing for our current setup right here. Again, Bitcoin is getting very, very close to that edge of the bullish control zone right here, and you can see that it's starting to, you know, ebb in its momentum. As you can see, still remains with a bit of upside momentum as long as above 47,000 bucks essentially on a daily closing basis. So today's closure will be rather important. But thus far, where has Bitcoin gotten to on its current pullback? Exactly at the 618. I actually did not prepare this one, but just, you know, symmetry within the market, weird shit, man. But basically right here, which is very interesting, very, very interesting. So, so now that I've kind of done that, you know, if we are going to see this signal hold to fruition, what we would be expecting next is that Bitcoin essentially doesn't close below, let's say, $47,000. We do see over the next 48 to 72 hours, Bitcoin do something like this. Let me actually get rid of this one right here because we've already played that out. But something like this, where, you know, maybe it closes somewhere in here today and tomorrow, and then pops back up, confirming a higher low within this region right here, and then the hopium is on it once again above 52,000 bucks. If you see something like that, that's going to obviously be really, really good for Bitcoin. I'd have no problem targeting moves back up towards 57, 59,000 bucks, and we can all be happy once again because we're rich by doing nothing and sitting on this fucking dead asset. So with that said, I do want to leave that one right there. Hopefully that was in some way helpful, and there you go for Bitcoin, sirs and zers.